can we be when we're working remotely? There are thousands of statistics out there about remote working, but we picked out the key stats that would impact you the most. For example, there was a poll that was recently conducted in Kenya after the whole COVID-19 pandemic. Most companies had to force their employees to work from home. And from this poll, it was established that clearly people are not used to working from home. People are used to face-to-face communication, face-to-face meetings. But at some point, they already say that remote working is the future of work. So how can we transform because of one circumstance or another? Right now it's a pandemic, but how can you be able to work remotely and productively? Now, in the poll in Kenya, it was interesting that many people were not feeling productive working from home because of very many issues. Maybe the kids, TV distraction, or very many issues as to why they say they're not able to work from home. So the aim of this whole webinar is to see, you have to reflect and say, okay, now that many people are not able to work from home, how can I be able to change this narrative such that I'm able to be productive while I'm able to work from home? Another interesting stat that I found on Buffer was saying that even if people are working from home, 22% were struggling with unplugging. What is the work-life balance that people are going to be having while working from home? Personally, when I began remote working in 2014, I experienced this a lot because I worked for a New Zealand company, and my mornings were very busy. I was waking up as early as 4 a.m. because it's already coming to midday in New Zealand, and it was really stressful. So this means that my evenings were pretty free. Later on, I moved to a different company that was US based, and my evenings became very busy and my mornings became very free. So you have to struggle this. You have to choose when do you have to unplug and enjoy your work-life balance. So we shall dive into that later on. And finally, I found another poll that was interesting. One was here conducted by Andela that found that about 20% of Ugandan developers, I'm forgetting the actual number, were more comfortable working. Actually, no, it was a bigger number. It was about 60 and above. Were more comfortable working from home, which correlates to the global statistics that more people are comfortable working from home versus working in remote, maybe in co-working places, versus working in maybe at the beach or anywhere you will feel comfortable working. So it means when you create the right environment, working from home, you can succeed with remote working. We can pull out the first poll, and I'll really urge all our presenters, all our attendees to take a look at it and see where exactly you fall. Rene, can you pull out our first poll?
Yeah, so just put it out. So it says, do you think that you can work remotely and be productive? So basically kind of benchmark to see what kind of questions we need to answer. I think we're waiting for 2 people to finish with their voting. So 1 more if possible. Yes. So we see that almost 90% says yes, and 1 person says, or 13% says, I'm not really sure. So yeah, we are keen believer that it is possible. But you know, I'm also, I think, Roger, you as well, with your experience in this, we've seen the pitfalls, so we know where it can also go wrong. So let's dive into them as well.
Cool. Okay, seeing the poll results, 88% are saying yes. Okay, cool. And at least people, why I'm happy about the results, we have no one saying no. It means that at least at
no
some
one's
point,
saying no. That's true.
yes, at some point there'll be some productivity. However, so what's interesting is for us to dive into people who are not sure why they're not why not able to work from home. Maybe by the end of the poll, they'll be able to answer these questions for themselves. It's one person anyway who said he's not able to work from home.
So I think the question then becomes, for the 88%, right? What do they need to do to get remote work right.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah,
True.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And that's where we're diving. Next slide. Cool.
yeah,
All right. As Viola said in the first introduction, I'll take you through the setup process. How comfortable, first of all, you have to get the right arrangement. How best do you feel when working? From a personal perspective, I feel more productive working when I'm standing up. Actually, Viola was very surprised whenever I come to office and I only stand up and I don't even sit down. This is something I learned in 2016. Whenever someone is standing up, at least out of you 80% of the time, I work while standing because that way I'm able to, I cannot doze or even think about uh, getting distracted because I now am focused to work. So your setup is very important. Now, my setup and your setup are two different things. While people are comfortable sitting in desks on a chair, it's very good, but also your posture also matters. When you sit while you're arching your back, of course, this is not good for your health in the long run as you become old. The same, but it's always good and advisable to sit up straight and you get more focus. Let's go to the equipment that we're using. It's, as you can see, Renier and I are putting on headsets. It's very paramount to be able to listen to people as you're trying to communicate when you're working remotely. My experience is when I joined the last company I was in, the US based company. I had a very old laptop, and my boss by then could hardly hear what I'm saying. So he told me, Roger, you know what? I give you only 1 day, fix your audio issues. Otherwise, don't come up for any meeting. That actually means you're fired. So, so I had to rush to town, because I couldn't swap my laptop by then because the assumption was this laptop was a problem. But I was like, you know what? I can't afford a new laptop right now. Let me try buying an HD microphone, a noise cancelling microphone, a headsets, and have a good microphone. So I went ahead, bought one, and the next meeting I never faced such issues. So what do we learn? We learned that it's the simple things that can make you communicate with your peers while working remotely are very paramount as you're doing your remote work. So yeah, that is my experience. Anyone
yeah.
care?
So one thing to share is that I always have a backup. So I have these old headphones that are wired, and I don't really like the way they sit, right? But when something happens with my Bluetooth or something happens with my battery or something, I can always switch to another headset. And I think that's also a very good practice to have. So you never get caught out.
So no one is addressing the big elephant in the room, and that's internet, right? I am on my fourth service provider right now.
We shall
How
get
do
there.
you,
Yeah,
We
how
shall
do you
get
get
there. The internet
good
part is coming.
internet
Don't worry.
connectivity while working remotely?
All right, that's where we
yeah,
are right now. Okay. Of course, we know being in a country whereby, first of all, internet is very expensive compared to our neighbors in
yeah,
the region. Maybe people from different countries, maybe people who live closer to the coast where fiber can easily, service providers can easily pay less for having fiber connectivity, will pay less for internet than us who are landlocked. Speaking from a personal perspective. So what I did personally as Roger, maybe others will share their experience. I have two connections. I always have a backup connection and my major connection. And I always ensure that my major connection is a dedicated connection, unlimited and dedicated. So I understand we all can't afford this, and we all have to live within our means. So what do we do? Viola has already said she's on her fourth what? Package or
I
bundle?
yeah.
Yeah. So it has to be budget. At the end of the day, you have to put in your monthly budget and say, okay, at least in my budget, I'll look at around maybe 5% for internet connectivity. Because without internet, you cannot work. Unfortunately, for remote work, internet is the heartbeat of your
yeah.
whole work. So you cannot do without it, unfortunately. So
Yeah, so
maybe Renia,
there's
you can
no
share.
sugarcoating this, huh?
Correct.
I
There's
mean,
no sugarcoat.
if you have no internet, you have no internet. The only thing
Correct.
that I do wish to state here is that, especially in Africa, sometimes it can be erratic. So and we get to that later. But communicating about it is always good. If you know, for example, hey, my internet is behaving very erratically, just say so, so people are aware of it. But yeah, you need to invest. This is something that you need to know. I need to have a good internet connection.
Correct.
I think, Rene, if I called you the king of remote work at office, I hope my job will still be safe. But how do you set up?
Sorry.
How do you set up? Like, we've talked about this. We've envisioned. Could you show us
Yeah.
around your office at the moment?
Yeah.
If it's not too much ask.
I can log out and let you see it. I think. Just a moment. So yeah, so I'm actually you can see behind me a lot of the kids drawings. So it's also kind of their place where they can draw and don't be disturbed. And then I don't know if you can see that I got an extra monitor that I actually someone wanted to throw it away, and I said, yeah, let me have it. So there I got it from. I got my book right here. I actually put my phone with my internet connection. I put it in
Radiate, don't move it.
in the window because then
Your
I
phone
get a
needs to.
better connection.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got my cup of coffee. Got it.
All right. So, and in terms of clutter, right? So, how do you deal with clutter? I see there are kids' drawings on the wall. Is that distracting? How do you maintain a minimal setup to be effective?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a question that you need a minimal setup. I mean, it's more what's your personal, how are you relaxed? And I find it relaxing that I'm still a little bit part of the household. So personally, it doesn't really bother me that much. But maybe for some it can be bothersome, and I think it's more about finding your own sweet spot, and finding out. So what kind of environment do you need to focus? And I basically also in my previous job experiences, I grew up with a lot of people around me working, so I can, I'm very used to that. But like I said, maybe you would like a very clean room, and that is something that you would need to create then.
Correct.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Perhaps what we forgot to stress on is when you're working, you have to choose a place in the room, in your house, that you're secluded, away from the disturbances, away from the kids or relatives. You have to tell them, okay, between this time and this time, please don't disturb me. I'll be in full focus mode. Internally, in Tunga, we call it Q2. The Tunga guys know this. So you always don't avoid putting yourself in a situation whereby you're working in a sitting room, the kids are running around, you are having meetings. Honestly, people who are with you in the meeting will if your mic is not muted and you're actually doing a presentation, it will be a little bit disturbing. But as well, we have to factor in external things, like maybe someone is mowing the lawn. That is something you cannot control in the neighborhood. You have to tell the people you're with, okay, you know what? My mic will be on mute in most of this meeting because I'm having external noise that I cannot, or pollution that I cannot control myself. So it's about communicating with the people as well, and also be putting yourself in an environment which requires as minimum disturbance as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you
absolutely.
said we could find our own space, but sometimes the bed works for me. So
that's
yeah, that's true. We'll get to that because there's a catch in there. There's a pitfall in there. So we'll get to that, right?
All right, cool. Can we launch our second poll?
cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Poll 2, it's about structure.
No, it's about non-structure.
No, it's about setup.
Setup, correct.
It's a setup. I got it right here. I'm going to launch it. So I think the first question is, so what location do you primarily work from? Is it either a co-working space, coffee shop, at home, maybe a library? I used to do that when I was a student, worked a lot from libraries. And what is your company's
Libraries are
view on
tricky.
remote working? They are. That's a fully remote, hybrid. So what's the tricky part about libraries? It's the sound, yeah. That's,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the most
Especially when you
tricky
have
part.
meetings.
Yeah, but if you want to focus, there's no better place than a library.
True, true. Perhaps it's good to be in the library when you have no meetings that day and you're working maybe on a big report that you have to a tight deadline. Uh,
Yeah.
Someone has a comment there in the Q&A in regards to
So Antonio says, yeah, they make you shush in the libraries. Yeah, that's true.
true.
So if you got your headphones on, then that's it. Yeah. Okay, we're waiting on 4 people, but then we're going to close it in a couple of seconds. Okay, so I'm going to end it. And we see that, can I share it? Yes, let me share it.
Hmm.
So we see that most
Interesting.
people primarily work from home at the moment, but it
Mhm.
is so one person said other. Curious what that is. And the company's view on remote working, yeah, that is a little bit different. We can work from home as needed. It's hybrid. It's fully remote. Certain number of days per week, month. Yeah, it's also one that I know of. Yeah, so you can
Interesting.
see that this differs a lot. It
Yeah,
differs a lot.
yeah.
Yeah. So personally, like a coffee shop, it doesn't work for me, but I know some people that really prefer it. It's like that.
I
Yeah.
tried coffee shops. They're a bit interesting. At least you can order for what you want as you're working, if you have the
So
money.
I think at least now that
Yeah, but
we
it's not
know
good for your wallet, eh?
True.
coffee and cakes, sugar and coffee. But yeah, so now
Yeah.
that we know at least most of the people on the call work remotely, the setup is done. How do you then maximize your time to be both effective and productive? And I'd like Rene to speak to this.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think so. We're going to the structure section, and I think what's the most different for me working remotely or working from home and working from an office is that when you go to an office, there is like this transition. You're going from the place where you relax and from the place where you live to the place where you work and to the place where you focus. And these two are really different activities. So think about your own when you do go to office or to a coffee shop or whatever. Think about how do you do that. There's a certain routine to it. So you first have a walk, and then you take a taxi or a boda or something like that, and then you arrive and you walk in through the door and you take a coffee and then you put in all your stuff and then you sit down at the desk, and what you don't realize is that that routine actually helps to set your brain in the work mode. And if you're working from home, it's a good chance that that is missing. So whatever you can do to help yourself transition, that's a good idea. So for me, for example, part of it is making a cup of coffee, telling everyone, hey, I'm going to work right now, going upstairs, hooking up all my equipment, and sitting down. So can we go to the next slide, Viola? Yeah. So another way to organize or another way to structure is your break time and your meal time. So this is one of the things that a lot of people have is they just have a couple of snacks next to their desk and then they eat all the while.
You
One,
cannot.
I don't think it's very good for you. Yeah, that's not very good for you. And I think the second thing is you can actually use those moments also to structure your time. So usually when you're in the office, you get disturbed by people. People walk up to you. You have some friendly chit chat, and what you don't realize is that it actually also creates some kind of an organization. Think about that colleague that always enters the room at 10 o'clock, and then you have a short break to talk to that person. So use those meal times or break times also to structure them and say, hey, I'm going to sit down at my desk from 8:30 till 10, and then I'm going to walk around for 10 minutes, have a small snack, make a cup of coffee. It also helps to structure your day. And I think also important is stay active. When you don't have the commute, you have less chances to really move around. And yeah, so whatever you can find and whatever you can do to stay active, I think that's a good practice. And there's tons of studies about how being physically fit will help your mental, and also your mental activity. And I think that for the most people here, whatever you're doing has a lot to do with your brain and a lot to do with creative thinking. But yeah, don't forget that if you take care of your body as well, that's going to make a huge impact.
So
Sure,
it's
sure.
good. It's
And
good
also
that
stay, yeah.
no, it's good that you mentioned the mental space you need to be in, right? And there's conversation about how
Yeah,
how it's lonely working remote. So from your experience, right, how do you stay socially active and productive while working remotely?
yeah. So one of the things that we do from Tunga is sometimes also to have like a call that is yeah, maybe a little bit work related, but it's more like a check-in. So from how's everyone doing, And I think it's good. You have to look out for one another, and with the whole COVID-19 thing. So we're in a lockdown here in Uganda. So we do this also with family. And a call is not the same thing, but I think just the feeling that hey, someone out there is thinking about me, that feeling alone is really important, and that is really helpful. So yeah, to stay social, and I think what I really like is all the non-work related things that you share with each other, like Bart, who is our company chef, sharing all his soups and things like that. But when he shares it, it also makes you think, hey, he's thinking about it, and he's yeah, it makes you feel connected.
So there's a remote way to stay social.
Yeah, of course. You have to stay social.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely, yeah. That's
there's
stay social,
someone,
yeah.
there's a question that is in the Q&A, and someone was asking whether, because he's used to making jokes in the office with friends and colleagues, and they do stuff together. He's
Yeah.
wondering how he can stay focused and how we can deal with this and stay focused in the long run. My response to that is that the way you receive your memes on WhatsApp or any other social media platform, you can create a company group whereby you can share the same jokes you would have shared when you're in office. Of course, avoid fake news. Very
Yeah.
important. So
Yeah.
it's not the end of the world. Right now, we are in a place whereby where we're in this whole pandemic situation. But after that as well, you create social groups. Some companies also meet. Fully remote companies globally, they meet once in a year. They maybe plan a trip to a certain location, and they meet once in a year. But the rest of the year, they are fully remote, and it's through these channels or different social media platforms they're able to keep in touch with each other. They make the same jokes they would have made as if they were together, and yeah, life moves on.
Um, Thank you for responding to that, Roger. I would like to reiterate
Yeah.
housekeeping rules that we'll be taking questions we'll be responding to questions at the end of the session, but they can keep them coming. So in case we don't address your question immediately, know that we'll address it at the end. Thank you. So we were still looking at the structure.
Absolutely.
Now you've planned your meal, you're trying to have some fun, but how do you actually plan? What else do you need to do to be very productive and effective? Renee.
Yeah, so I think this is more it's online and offline, but I think if you work remotely, you need a higher level of independence. I think it's just a fact because you literally look around me. I got no one looking over my shoulder to say, hey, what are you working on today? And I like that no one is doing that at the moment. But you also don't have anyone to push you when sometimes you need a push. So I think my number one tip is get a to-do list tool, and especially in the beginning of my years when I started working, I thought I can remember what I need to do. Why do I need a tool about that? But it really helps to stay focused because if you put something on your to-do list tool to do it next week, it also allows you to forget about it, right? And I think another big tip is, to structure your calendar in such a way also for yourself to say, hey, I'm going to block this time for some big tasks. So if you got, for example, some research that you need to do for a user story, or you need to go over some designs or whatever, that's a big task that sets it on its own, and you need focus for that. So if you're gonna put it in your calendar and say, hey, this is some time that I dedicate to do that, it helps you to stay disciplined and to do it, and it also helps you, like I said, to forget about it at times that you didn't book the time, and that is also important, right? So with your to-do list and with your calendar, you can create a lot of focus for yourself. And I think working remotely, I think, Roger, you can attest that you really need a high level of independence, and that focus is extremely helpful.
True, I agree. And just to add on something, not only doing your list, but also prioritizing that list and get to know what has to be done fast and what will be done least, depending on what your boss needs or what you need to accomplish by before the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and there's one tip that we got actually at Tunga from an internal training that we did, and we all had this idea, wow, why don't we do this? And that is to plan your week ahead, and it sounds really easy, but if you do it, it's incredibly powerful because it helps you to connect to your bigger goals, right? And if you're anything like me, your mind goes everywhere and you think, hey, I can do this and I can do that, right? But you need to connect also what is the big difference that you want to make this week, and making your own weekly planning is super, super helpful in that regard. I do it in Monday mornings. I know other people do it Friday afternoons, for example, for the week after. So it's a little bit of your own choosing, of course.
Well, so we're ready for our next poll.
Sure.
Okay. So let me put it right here. I'm going to launch it now.
Oh.
So the first one is, so what do you often do to take breaks and recharge throughout the day? So watch a 30-minute episode, get something to eat, take a walk, take a nap. I never take naps. I'm not good at it. No.
Me too.
And what is the biggest benefit that you see in remote work?
Actually, I can take a nap as I'm watching the movie than just force myself to take a nap. So
yeah. Yeah, I know some people that really take naps and they really
I
swear
do.
by it, but I just get I get super sleepy afterwards always.
But how do you watch a 30-minute episode?
Well, you could be having a 30-minute interlude. No, it depends. Could be a comedy or something that lasts 30 minutes. So
That's true.
why not?
That's
You
a
need
wrap.
to have the discipline to turn it off at the end.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's see what the stats say.
Biggest benefits remote work.
Okay. So yeah, 5 more seconds. Now it's pretty divided.
Huh.
Pretty divided. So I'm going to share it right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
What?
So watch 30-minute episodes. It's actually quite popular. I
It's
didn't
popular.
expect that. Yeah, but I think
Interesting.
it's yeah. When you think about it,
Mhm.
so it's yeah, it's a good way to unwind. So what is the
Correct. Yeah.
biggest benefit you see? It's flexible schedule. Flexible schedule. Working from any location. Time with family. Also got a vote. Yeah.
True. I can attest to this.
Interesting.
When I left, let me call it full-time employment to come into freelance work. I really felt clogged up in an office. This is my personal view, and I wanted something that will allow me do my personal work at the same time, work professionally. So I agree with the stats. A flexible schedule is very important when you're as a choice to work remotely. So the stats make sense.
I mean,
Yeah.
I may not have backup to justify productivity levels that come
Mhm.
with flexibility, but I know when you have a flexible schedule, your productivity levels also tend to peak.
Correct, because you're thinking, your brain is like boiling up. You're thinking, okay, when I'm done with this, I have something else I'm going to work on out of work. So basically, your brain is always thinking. Even if something's boring you at work, at least you look forward to something else which is not boring you elsewhere. And the reverse is true. So yeah, I agree.
Cool. So the main interlinkage between the teammates, between the client. Yeah, I actually have, I came across interesting statistics today in regard to communication, right? That spoken words constitute 7% of communication. 35% go to voice and tone, and 55% go to body language.
All right.
So when you take
Yeah.
away the element of physical meetings, that leaves us with voice and tone and spoken words,
Yeah.
which is still, which is
Absolutely.
45%, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
how then do you fill in this gap while working with remote teams? And I would like to see how you tackle this.
Right. Cool. That
Yeah.
should be tackled. Yeah, I
So
agree with you. Rainier?
yeah. So my tip would be video. So what we have right now is super helpful, and it's not the same as being in the same room as each other because it is subconsciously less less easy to pick up on signals, but still it's an indicator. If I'm smiling right now, it's a lot different. I also have a tip here because sometimes it's your connection is not good enough to really support video for a longer period of time. And what really helps in that way is just use it for the first couple of minutes, right? So you get a feeling of who's sitting on the other side of the connection with me, and then you can just say, hey, my connection is not that good, so do you mind if I switch off my video? But that already helps in setting up your rapport with the other person.
Sure, I agree with that. And in most cases, Viola, what was your 55%? The last one, video, I think. Uh, you're mute. You're mute. conference
55%
call
of
bingo.
body language.
Yeah. Yeah, body language.
Oh,
It's very important in. I don't want to repeat what Renia said, but body language is very important, and the way you can only see body language is via video.
Yeah.
And once you cut off that, it makes things more
Yeah.
complicated. And which brings us to that our bingo, our
Brilliant.
bingo matrix table that you've been seeing there. From the bingo table, I'm sure we've all experienced, or those of you will experience, saying or asking such questions whenever you're coming into a conference call, or whenever you are, before or after or during a conference call. These are things that at least must happen at any one point. So it's very it's normal, all right, and it's always good to communicate, to ask such questions. Are you there? Is someone mute? We have a live example that happened here. Someone was speaking as on mute, so it's normal. It's and you don't need to get frustrated because someone is speaking and is on mute, or the person who has been speaking for a full minute while on mute does not need to be frustrated, only to realize, I've been on mute, and they have to repeat themselves all over again. So we have to be empathetic when we're doing a lot of this communication on online. And this bingo table is a perfect example of all the things that happen while we're doing communication online or on working remotely. And next, which means how do we communicate? And when you're working remotely, your only way of communicating is through either typing or audio. So you do a lot of the typing in the Slack groups or Skype group, whatever you have, whatever communication channel you're using, communication tool you're using. So that's where the tools come in. So you have to do a lot of communication when you're working remotely. That way, everyone is on the same pace or same page, and even your superiors know what you're actually working on. Especially if you're working in an agile or you're working on a sprint, your 15-minute stand-ups can also be done remotely. So how you communicate during these stand-ups is also very, very, very paramount. And as the slide says, there's nothing as over communicating. Communication is key when you're working remotely. Uh, Next. So
I
yes, Bayala.
No, so about this particular slide, which I think you'll probably address later, communicating what are we online, has work started, but then also how this ties into different time zones. So you can please go ahead. Yeah.
All right, cool. Different companies do it differently. Um, I categorize them as two: companies based on trust, mutual trust, and companies that not they don't trust. I can't say don't trust their employees, but they want to have a full sense of accountability. Now, the companies that base themselves on mutual trust, this is where Tunga falls. You can just create a channel whereby everyone comes on and tells people what they are, whether they've logged on to work, they have gone for a lunch, a small break, or whether they have logged off. Okay, that's based on mutual trust. Now, well, other companies, this is mainly companies that have over 1,000 employees and are working remotely. They'll use technology to fill this gap where they have tracking software to see what their employees are doing. Screenshots are being taken, video shots are being taken. Now, I personally I don't agree with those because it has a lot of privacy concerns, and actually I had to quit a job in the past because of that. Honestly, if you're tracking me every time, not trusting what I'm doing, and I'm showing that I'm producing results, it doesn't make sense to have not to have this mutual trust. So it comes down to the company's policy. Will they track you or not, to see if you're logged in or logged out, or a company that is based on trust? And luckily, all the attendees here are chatting with a company based on mutual trust. We trust people to produce the results they're supposed to be doing with their clients. And yeah, that is my take about this. Renier, any experience on your side?
No, I think I totally agree in that, and I think what what we say at Tunga is we don't really focus on when you're working or how much you're working, but more on what are you delivering. But that doesn't negate the fact that you need to be clear to each other when you're online or not. So we have this simple channel in our Slack called Office, and it's just for that, it's just stating, hey, I logged on, you can reach me right now, or it's about, hey, I'm in meetings the coming 2 hours, so you can't reach me, or I'm going to lunch. So, and I think that balance is really important. And if you see what's there right now, it's the sharing is caring. Is you know
Yeah,
we also
true.
have this rule that says everything that we do is in public channels. And I know also culturally wise that for a lot of people in Africa, they're very polite, so they don't want to be a burden to others.
Right.
They don't want
Spam.
to their conversation to trouble someone else. And but I think with remote working, the opposite is true because it's my choice whether I log on to a certain channel or not. But if I don't see your communication, I don't know what you're doing. And I think trust is a really, it's a really, it's a balance.
Mm,
And it's a balance between being transparent and it's a balance about taking your own time to do something. But if you're never transparent about what you do, it's very hard to trust people. So the more you communicate and the more you share, the better. And that sharing can also be like, oh my, I opened this file and I see like 200 error log messages, and that's fine. That's a great indication for someone else to say, oh, that person is going to be pretty busy. Maybe he needs some help.
true.
And by doing that, I think that's a great instrument to really work together as a team while you are working remotely.
True. Perhaps what I forgot to mention that even if it's good to share, there are some limits of sharing. Personal things like I'm going to see my gynecologist, for example. That is too much of sharing, and
Yeah,
it's always good to
yeah,
avoid
too much information. That's true. That's true.
personal sharing.
Yeah,
I don't know why is Viola laughing.
Yeah.
that's a very that's a very interesting choice of example, but go
I
on.
know. Well, why I choose an extreme is because I've been in situations where people are sharing, honestly, something that doesn't concern me and I don't need to know about. It's really your personal life. And an example, at some point, I remember 2018, one guy shared, okay, I had a fight with my wife. For crying out loud, bro, we don't want to, my wife wants to go to hospital. I had a fight with her. Like, you don't need to give me that much information. That is family matters. I don't need to have that much detail. Give me something
That's
plain,
true. That's true. But
professional. Yes, it's true.
but still, I think yeah. But still, I would say I'd rather have that person share this was over the limit than people refraining from sharing because they are scared to step over boundaries or something. So,
True, true.
but I agree. There's definitely this thing that's called TMI, too much
TMI,
information.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
So
But yeah, you can, and I think that's about this. You can create those rules with each other. So
Correct, yeah.
uh, you can create those rules. So how do you communicate with each other? And
Hmm.
at Tunga, for example, we say, within office hours, you need to be online. And if you are not online, that's cool, but you need to state that you're not online, right?
Correct.
And that also has the opposite effect that if you want to work at night, perfectly fine, but don't expect me to be online at that point, right? And I think
Correct.
there's all these tiny kind of rules, and you can go down to the micro level as you want, but being clear about it, I think that's really helpful.
True. I think which speaks to the golden rules that are on the slide right now. You create your own rules within the company.
Yeah,
You decide on what language to use, how to simple language that has to be used. It's very key, and also
yeah,
the kind of things that you can share. What are the limits that can be shared on your random channels or are um, content that can be shared on those
Yeah.
channels. So it's very important. Yeah. Viola,
Yeah.
unmute.
Viola, you want to say
Yeah.
something?
Yes. That you see, this is on the assumption that your team has experience with working with remote teams, so they probably use Slack. But sometimes you're the guinea pig, you're their first remote employee, right?
Hmm.
And they don't have a remote working handbook to hand to give to you. How do you navigate this scenario?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just start at the basic level, eh? So start with
Yeah.
one rule, and then it's because there's no rule book that works in every situation. And so if you are yourself in a team or in a environment that says that doesn't have any communication rules set up, I think the first thing to say is, hey, we need this. So what would be a good rule to start with?
True. I agree. So I like the image you put that is in this slide. It speaks a lot, especially when people are in office and they have a conference call with people in a different region altogether. This does a lot of things. One, it connects to setup. What kind of equipment are you going to use while you're working in such a scenario? But at the same time, with your colleagues, you have to make sure you understand each other. In case there is no clarity, please always don't be shy to ask again. Please, what did you mean by this? I never understood this. It's always good to have clarity. Of course, it's not good when you ask the same thing more than 6 times. It becomes boring to the other party. So you try to make sure you seek to understand, and then you also be understood later on. So it's very paramount. Viola?
So, I mean, I think in the interest of time, we have about
10
a
minutes.
few minutes for the Q&A. But the last thing I would like
Yeah,
for Randy to speak to is time zones, because most of the clients we are working with are from different time zones. They're not necessarily in the same. How do we then ensure that our communication
yeah,
benefits both parties?
yeah.
Can I start? Or
So I think the first one is to be clear about it. So be clear. Maybe the client doesn't know in which time zone you are, right? So it starts, I think, with that, with being explicit and saying, hey, I'm in EAT, or I'm in WAT, West African time. I think that's a very good start to become aware of it, and it also needs to become a practice of yourself. So every time you mention a time, you also mention the time zone abbreviation, and that can be Western African time (WAT), Eastern African time (EAT), Central African time, Central European time. Don't forget the Europeans have summertime as well. Um, and when the regions are vastly out of each other's way. So, for example, with the United States, then
Well,
you need to be very clear about the rules that you have and when are you online. And that may
GMT.
be that you need to wrap around your schedule a little bit. So
Or
for US clients, for example, I often have calls in the evening. And then I say to them, I'm available between 8 and 10 Eastern African time in the evening. So being clear about it and just being aware of it, I think that's the best thing that you can do. And don't kid yourself. It is tricky, and every once in a while you're going to make a mistake, and you're going to be waiting in your online call, and they said, "Oh, but I thought it was Central European time." That happens. That happens.
yeah, I've been there.
Been there, yeah, yeah.
Cool. So
luckily, when you're using tools, maybe you're setting up a meeting, these tools automatically translate your time to the other person's time.
Yeah,
So that is a plus,
that's true.
and it can
Yes.
help you. The tricky bit comes in actual development. We're running a sprint with someone in the US, you're based in Africa, you have developers in Europe.
Yeah.
It becomes tricky to do things like daily stand-ups because it's hard to get the entire team at the same time every day. It becomes tricky, and it's one of the issues I faced in my previous previous work experience. It's what happens is that certain companies will have internal tools. I know Tunga has one as well, whereby people can easily communicate what they have done during the daily stand-up in written form. Okay, what they did yesterday, they're doing currently, what they're doing tomorrow. That way, when the manager comes the following day, they're able to say, okay, now he did A, B, C, and D, and he has to follow up at a different time. What I used to do, I used to schedule a call with my developers each and every on a daily basis, different developers at different times. That way, I have a stand up with you alone, but based on what you've actually done. And this helps me at the end of the week, and by the time the sprint is done, I've cycled through the entire developers on a daily basis. Even if we are all not in the same meeting at the same time, the work can still go on. People are still productive, and we are still able to deliver efficiently in different time zones.
Cool. So honestly, I think the discussion pretty much addressed most of the questions that were raised prior. But we'll be getting into our Q&A session. We have about 4 minutes. But Roger, before you pull that up, we unplugging, right? People are saying the dining is the office, the one couch is the sitting room, the other couch is the dining. How do you unplug out of this routine of working remotely so that you still have a social life and you still have a working environment? Renier.
Yeah, so the big pitfall is something that we call association, and that is if you work at your dining table, then when you will have dinner, you will think of work. And when you work in your bed, then when you go to sleep, you will think of work. So that messes up your perception of what objects are related to. And I think that is the importance of what we said is you need to have a separate desk or something, but you need to be at a place that allows you to associate it with work. And that is, I think, the biggest way that you can really unplug, and that is by literally moving physically away from that space.
It's more of a psychological thing. And I always advise people when you're unplugging, always say, okay, by 5 p.m., I'm done with work. Whatever is happening on the desk, please make sure you spare at least 1 or 3 or 2 hours to unwind. First, on a daily basis, I always make sure by 5 or 6, I'm done with work and everything else can wait. Because you end up having physical fatigue sitting in one place for those who like to sit in one place the entire day doing the same thing. Uh, Please always spare time to unplug. This is just a must because your brain needs to rest at some point. You need to walk around your neighborhood. Please ensure you have social distancing nowadays as you're doing that. It's always paramount to leave the same. You have to look at different things, look at different people. It's very important than looking at the same thing all the time. Perhaps, Viola, what you meant at some point, you said you have scenarios whereby someone is in a 1 or 2 bedroom, one bedroom apartment, and it's either the sitting room or the bedroom. The kitchen is somewhere outside. I don't know, Rene, can you relate to this somehow?
I can. Yeah.
Good, perfect. So, so you have to create. You have to be within your means. Unfortunately, you have to communicate and tell people, you know what, I'm in the sitting room, and I need to work to be productive within this environment. Or you shift your desk or whatever your work setup environment into somewhere near your bed, not on the bed, but in the bedroom. Seclude yourself away from distraction. That is very paramount as you're doing your work. And don't forget to unplug. It's
Yeah.
it's crucial. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. So Ben Karma, he's from Egypt, is asking how much do you work per day? I don't know if it's in terms of um, quantity or in terms of time, but you could speak to either.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, so it differs a little bit for me, to be honest. So there are days that I work like 9 or 10 hours, and there are also days 7 hours. So it differs a lot. But usually I try to have a structure where I work at least 3 hours in the morning and at least 3 hours in the afternoon. And then either, my mornings I start a little bit earlier, or my afternoons I work a little bit later. And at night, what I personally like to do is in the evening to log in and do another hour or two of work. So for me, that's quite flexible. To be honest.
It comes down to you're right. You're right. I agree with you, Renier. And for me, it comes down one to contractual obligation. You have a contract that tells you work maybe 4 hours a day
Yeah,
versus what is actually what kind of work you actually have on ground on to do that day. You may try to work within 4 hours, but you find that maybe the work is more than 4 hours. So what do you do? Do you put in an extra hour to finish the work versus pushing that work the following day? It's at some times it comes down to, I don't want to use the word common sense, but lack of a better word. What is higher priority for me? How have I prioritized my work? That way you'll be sure that within those 4 hours, the higher
yeah,
priority tasks
yeah.
have been completed and you're left with the least priority tasks. That's the way I do my work. So to balance both the contractual work and also the current work that I have to do that day.
All right. So for there's another question.
It's about
If yeah, it's about positions. It's not in line with our conversations, but we can pick this up at the end of the webinar in our Slack channel. Like I said, we will be sharing the presentation in Slack in general. Feel free to drop
I
your
have,
questions.
yeah, there's one more I see in the chat that I do think that is important to address. So shall we do that as the last one?
Okay, cool.
That is from Vivian. How do you ensure that you deliver on time when you also have to take care of the family during this pandemic? And I think this is a good
Yeah.
question because these are stressful times, and they're stressful for everyone, everywhere in the globe. That everyone is affected by this. And it's when I mean affected, it's really affected. Yeah? So on a personal level, it goes about safety of your loved ones, and I think therein lies the key of the answer, in that everyone at this moment can relate to that. So the first thing is communicate, and so communicate about your situation. And if you have a situation that you have to take care of your family and that is difficult, just be open and clear about it. And I think the second one is about you say, how do I ensure that I deliver on time? It's also to be realistic. And when your project or your employer is putting deadlines on you that are not realistic, you know, always the best strategy is to be clear and upfront about it. Because if you're going to deliver something late and you're going to tell them about it after the delivery date, they're going to be not amused. But if you're going to deliver something late and you tell them in advance, they're still not going to be very happy, but they know what they're getting. And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Bella, you're mute.
I looking through the chat and the Q&A, we seem to have exhausted the questions that came in during the chat, and the ones that came in prior to the webinar were addressed. So during the interaction that I had with our panelists, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. I
Yeah.
hope
Welcome.
you enjoyed
Thanks
yourself.
everyone for being here.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Absolutely.
Ranier and Roger, maybe one also nuggets of wisdom as your parting shots about working remotely and being successful, and we call this a webinar.
I'll start first and I'll leave the rest to
Yeah.
Renier. One,
Okay.
remote working is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, and it has been seen as the future of work. So how can you as a person be able to work remotely and be productive? These are some of the questions we've been able to answer, and always make sure to unplug. It's very important. That way you'll be very, very refreshed by the time you come back to work. Speak to your colleagues either online or use any other channel to talk to them. Once this whole pandemic is done, don't forget to go hang out with them later on. Then always remember to come back to work in the morning. That way you develop mutual trust with your employee, and you're able to work successfully and also remotely. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Thank you,
Yeah.
Roger. Okay.
Yeah. So for me, working remotely really allows you to make it personal, you know, and structure your work in your life. And it's a bit like the saying, hey, you don't live to work, but you work to live. So it allows you to structure it in a way that it also suits your surrounding, and that takes effort. You know, it's not easy, but if you allow yourself to experiment a little bit with it and to read up a little bit about it, I think it can truly make you happy in your work.
Sure.
All right. Thank you. And like I hinted earlier, flexibility comes with productivity and happiness. So you might as well start on your remote working when you get the chance to. You
Absolutely.
can find
Yes.
the pre-recorded video on our YouTube channel, right? But we'll also share these details on Slack.
Yes.
Thank you again for joining us, and happy quarantining.
For those in quarantine.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.